Welcome to STEM Talk. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. On this episode, we're going to be talking about AI and how we see it throughout our community. Today we have Abhishek. Abhishek, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure. Right now, I am heading an AI department at a biopharma called Sage RX. This company has just recently found a drug which can help women in depression. And my role is to embed AI solutions across every department of the company.
Have you always worked in the AI field?
I wouldn't say so. First time I heard the AI terminology was way back in year 2000 in the university. At that time, it was a very novel concept. I read about it and then I forgot. I came into mainstream. There, in the job, I started my job and nobody was doing AI. So, no, I was never in AI till recently.
What was your first reaction to AI? Because I know a lot of people, as the rise of AI, a lot of people, it's a new concept for them. So what was your reaction when you first heard about AI?
Yeah, very interesting story. I was at JP Morgan and I was asked to sign on a model to be released into production, meaning, and when I asked that what it would do, somebody said it is going to predict sabotage among the employees. And I was like, okay, I am a computer science master's. What kind of voodoo are you talking about? How can you predict that an employee is going to be involved in a sabotage? But 6 months later and 2 convictions, I was so convinced that I decided I need to really understand the math behind this. And so I went for my second master's in analytics. And that's how I jumped into, that was a transformation in my life to move from technology roles to completely AI field.
And how long has this transfer taken? Because I know now a lot of students are wondering when is AI going to become more of a normal thing? So for you, when did AI start to become more of a foreign subject to average part of your life?
I think I saw the trend of financial industry moving towards AI way back in 2014 in a major way as such, and big adoption by 2018. And I think today every industry, no matter what, be it banking, be it your retail stores, everybody is doing AI. And it will, in my opinion, within 2 to 3 years, it would be AI will be touching every common man in whenever they are touching the computers.
So how has AI specifically changed your industry or had an impact on your industry?
So right now I'm in biopharma, right? One problem that is plaguing pharmaceutical companies is that it takes them over 10 years to find a blockbuster drug and over an expense of $2 billion. So there's a lot of trial and error. What we are doing currently at Sage is we are trying to predict a certain studies, the outcome of certain studies based upon the previous outcomes that have happened. For example, in your lab, you are testing, right? Something with chemical compounds. The same thing drug industry does. And sometimes your experiment fails, sometimes it is successful. But drug industry documents that, success as well as failures. So what we are doing, AI, Gen AI kind of a thing, to go look up all those documents where success and failures are, learn from that, and then when a chemist creates his experimentation, before he starts the experiment, we say the probability of success is, say, 80%. Then he should actually do that experiment. If it is less than 50%, he may not do it. So that is going to save time. It will speed up the development of drug.
So do you think that AI will become a huge game changer in terms of medicine, in terms of making it more efficient, decreasing spending?
Yes. So the whole discovery of drug is about time and total number of people involved in it and how much resources are being dedicated to it. By predicting which path will be successful and only doing those successful path, we are going to reduce the time taken to discover the drug and hence less expenditure, right? Less
So
cost.
it sounds like AI is largely improving the medical game, but have you ever witnessed like a consequence of AI or something AI is doing that isn't necessarily helping the process?
So outside of pharmaceuticals, you must be hearing about bias when you are going to online forums, etc. Right?
Yeah.
It can be manipulated. Yes. So that is the weaponization of AI to change your opinion, to keep you in a silo under the umbrella of personalization. That can happen. But overall, if you think, I will give an example of Excel. Do you use Excel?
Yes.
Right? 30 years ago, when Excel came to the forefront, everybody said Excel is going to kill the jobs of accountant. Do you think that has happened today?
It's made accountants' jobs easier and better.
So that's what AI is going to do for each and every walk of life. Whether you are doing a homework at home or whether you are keeping account of how many people came through your store, everywhere the AI will be embedded and it will be like Excel, helping you do the job. It's not going to eliminate any job.
So how has your team, I know you mentioned there's the bias side of AI, how has your team made sure to keep that out of your AI model in terms of medicine?
So we have certain methodologies. As AI is growing and advancing, those who understand it have come up with methodologies to keep the bias out. Looking into bias has been quite a while in industry. For example, in banks, when they are giving a loan, they always see whether there is a bias toward race, gender, age, etc. So they know how to detect bias, and that's what is being implemented in AI to keep it out of it.
With medicine, I know you said that your specific thing is postpartum depression.
Depression, yeah.
What do you think are some other ways that AI, do you think AI will kind of spread to other parts of medicine in terms of doctors, and we've seen the growth of like things like WebMD?
Yes. So think of this today. Whenever a patient goes to a doctor, doctor hears takes the history, asks questions, and from that determines what should be the medicine given. Now, embedding AI would be the patient is speaking to microphone and giving all the history, and then based on that, it will predict what should be the medicine dosage given to this patient. And then the job of doctor would be to verify it is correct or not. So that allows the doctor to focus more on a very specific problem that the patient would be having. It cuts down him or her asking questions, saves time. So
rather than the doctor, instead of the AI replacing the doctor doesn't have to look through all the symptoms, they only have to evaluate the AI's rulings.
Yes, and what it will do, it will take the knowledge of many doctors, and that's what it will bring it to this doctor, the one who is right now using it. So the margin of error, the probability of this doctor making an error reduces drastically.
So how specifically, because I know you just mentioned that doctors, you could compile the knowledge of multiple doctors. What have you used to train your AI in terms of how it makes its decisions?
So we are taking knowledge of all the researchers that have posted or filed with the FDA, right? For every failure success they do there. We have compiled their knowledge and we are reading through. There are millions of documents. We are reading through that and then giving an advice to a researcher what to look for or how to proceed or how to design his experiment in the lab.
So what type of transition do you think in terms of how quickly or what size of a change we could see in the medicinal industry? Like, do you see this as a upcoming change, or do you think it will be more over time?
So, pharma industry has been lagging in terms of, in comparison to finance industry to adopt AI, but they have started. So it is up and coming, and I think the opportunities are very vast. It's opening up. They have embraced it, that this is something that we should do, and they are no longer skeptical about it. So there will be many opportunities benefiting this industry in next 10 years.
So how do you think AI in general, do you think it's a necessary thing that we should use, or do you think it's something we should use with more of a caution? And because some people today have fear of AI in terms of, like you mentioned, replacing their jobs, the bias that you said, or just the fact that it's a foreign concept. What do you think are the kind of steps that we're going to have to take as a society to kind of integrate AI within our daily lives?
So I will go back to the example of Excel, that it's just a machine, or to think of that you see people driving car, right? When car came, people said there will be too many accidents. But when we take machine, we don't give away our common sense. We have to keep on applying the same common sense when we are using the machine to see whether what we are getting is the reality. We should keep on asking that, and then you are safe.
So in terms of medicine and your sector, I know AI has been something for you to predict, but do you think AI would make future solutions? Because for your, do you use AI to give you a solution of what to do, or only to identify a problem?
Oh, the Black Panther phase of medicine, as you saw in Black Panther movie. I think we are 50 years away from AI to completely design drugs on its own, or to prescribe drug on its own. It can predict the outcome with probability, but whether that is accurate or not is the human doctor to determine.
And with predictability, have you seen like a success rate on your AI in terms of being able to correctly identify and predict what you guys are looking for?
So we started with 10% accuracy. We are at around 68%, and I think we will not be able to cross 80%. We will not be able to, because it is, after all, the machine is learning only from the human knowledge that is around there, right?
So AI will never be some perfect magic ability to be able to spot things on its own. You're saying we still have a way to go, not only to reach the threshold of a probable guess, but we're still in terms of what you guys are doing in a way of like, this is kind of getting it right, but we still have to do some more checks on our own.
Yes, and not in near term. I don't see it getting to 90+%.
Well, thank you so much for coming today. I just have a final question for you. In terms of AI, do you see, like, what advice would you give for students or people that are a little shy to adopt AI into their lives? What advice would you give them in terms of it's going to be okay, or it's going to get better?
Yeah, so going back to this, right, AI will be embedded in everything that you touch in coming years as such. So you can decide whether you want to use AI which will benefit you, or you just want to be used by AI. That is your call. So if you want the first thing, that you want to use AI to where you want, you should learn about it, how it functions.
I love that saying, use AI or let AI use you.
Yes.
I think that's great. I think, personally, I think there's nothing more important than learning how to use AI. I think that people who use AI will get ahead, and I think the most important thing we can do right now in this stage is to start learning how to use AI. Thank you so much for coming. Next segment, we're going to talk with Eyal Steinberg about how AI is used in the business force.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, welcome back. Welcome back to STEM Talk. We're going to now talk with Eyal Steinberg. Eyal, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Eyal Steinberg. I'm the general manager of the technical community and client engineering at IBM.
So what does IBM do? Can you tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
it?
so IBM is an iconic company. It's been around for over 100 years, and it does a lot of things. It started off, in the early days doing typewriters, doing all these, laptops, and over the years, it's kind of continued to innovate and reinvent itself. Probably in the last generation, people might know IBM famously for about 21 years ago, we were on Jeopardy, and there was a machine called Watson that competed against two of the biggest hosts and won. And that was like one chapter in this much longer chapter of just being at the leading edge of innovation, specifically around hybrid cloud and AI. And I think we're going to talk about AI, but that's what we do.
So what do you do in the big, wide span of IBM? What do you focus on in terms of like your role in IBM?
Sure. So IBM has three core parts of our business. There's one part which is the technology. Think of it as software and hardware and cloud. It's a pretty big part of our overall business. There's another part which is consulting, which we work with companies to help them get better results and get more productivity, efficiency. So that's the consulting team. And then we did an acquisition of a company a couple years ago called Red Hat, which is very much open source, and they get a lot of pride of being neutral. So that's a third part. So I'm in charge of the technical community. So think of that as your trusted advisors, like people who meet with customers and have like technology in their bones, and they meet the customer where they are to talk about our products and services, how they could help companies.
So what does AI do for your company? I know you mentioned Red Hat and
Yeah.
things like that, but what specific things do your AI do? Because in the last part we talked to Abhishek, and he was medicinal focused
Yeah.
AI. So what does IBM's AI do, or what do you do?
Sure. So the AI has been around for a while, and I think it's, Abhishek did a nice job talking about the evolution and how it's not really scary. It's math in the core. IBM has been there for the whole time. There was something predating ChatGPT called foundation models, which made everything possible. IBM was on the leading edge of a lot of those big changes. Now what we do is we package a lot of these products and services into offerings and approaches and services that are available to customers, a lot of the world's biggest customers. So people, like we divide the world into two parts. There's things for consumers, so that'd be like us, that'd be like ChatGPT, and then there's things for the enterprise or for businesses. And if you think of like the biggest businesses in the world, big federal governments, big insurance companies, big banks, big retail operations, big telcos, like they have a lot of requirements that are very specific that you can't mess up. That's what IBM does. When you can't mess up and it's AI for business, that's really where we specialize.
So I know you work with like selling AI and AI for consumers, but how do you at IBM use AI to help you sell AI or distribute AI?
Yeah, great question. So I think there's two parts. First is we got a really big team of people. And one of the biggest things that AI could do right now, like today, is productivity gains. So think of anybody, if you're a student and you use ChatGPT to get your homework to be 60 minutes down to 10 minutes. That same thing exists for pretty much any other job out there. So if I'm spending an hour to prepare a presentation and I could do it with AI to make it 10 minutes, or if I'm doing an email that takes an hour and I could do it now in 5 minutes, like there's a lot of productivity gains there. So I think that's the starting point. How do we get the masses of people to use AI to increase their productivity?
So with the increased productivity, I mentioned this to Abhishek too, but it looks like on the surface level, AI is really helping. But how would you say are some negative consequences that AI brings to the table?
Sure. So I think there's two or three that stand out for me. The first is people are making a bigger deal than of what it is. So I think the first is just approach it, right? Like, it's not this scary magical thing. Though it appears like it's magic, it's really not magic as long as it's controlled. The second is there is hallucination, right? Which means that the model is trained off a certain corpus of data or data, And it's basically extrapolating out what's going to come in the future. Like, it's not always going to get it right, and sometimes it makes up stuff that's crazy, crazy talk. And I think, Abhishek did a nice job talking about guardrails and, the percent accuracy. There's things that you can do as any company or person to put the right guardrails in place. That there's a term called human in the loop, which means if it makes a recommendation, does a person should kind of give it a quality check before you just kind of execute it. So those are the kind of things that I think people could do to kind of control AI and not be scared of it.
So what is IBM's AI? I know you said Watson performed in the Jeopardy, but has IBM created any new AIs?
We did. So about a year and a half ago or so, we created a product called Watson X. And we've been spending a ton of money on advertisement. If you watch tennis in the US Open, or if you watch golf in the Masters, we're spending a lot of time and money and effort to advertise Watson X, which is how we're going to market around our AI product. And even within that, like, it's not just IBM. There's a whole community. That's the thing that's most exciting about what's happening now. It's not just one single company. It's not just going to be OpenAI and GPT-3, or it's not going to be Microsoft. It's going to be this whole community of open source and closed source products. And IBM's view is Watson X is the container to be able to give all of those things, either closed, open, trusted, governed, and put it all together in a way that people consume it.
So you said that IBM or Watson X has that big cloud of other companies that can compile onto it. How do you make sure that the data that the other ones are being trained off that IBM might not have created are saying the right things? Or even within IBM's control, what are some of, like, do you have checks or, as you mentioned, guardrails that make sure that the AI is as accurate as possible and saying the right things?
What an amazing question. So there's two parts to that question. The first is most of these models are trained on publicly available data. And reality is the early kind of models really didn't have a lot of governance or control around where the data came from. And there's a lot of lawsuits now, quite frankly, about New York Times suing OpenAI. Like, where does the data come from? A lot of people are being pretty shady about kind of that source. The first is, if you're going to trust something, listen, if you're doing poetry and you're doing kind of like, write me a quick email so I can communicate something, who cares if it's accurate or not accurate? Because it's not that big stakes. But if you're a medical company, or if you're a banking company, or if you're a retail company, there could be a huge, huge cost of getting that wrong, especially stealing somebody's data or stealing information. So the first is knowing the transparency of what the model was actually trained on. There's only so much you could learn on publicly available data. Like, a lot of these companies, quite frankly, if you look it up and Google it or do a search, like ChatGPT, GPT-3, 4, like, they never disclose the source of the data, which is very, very, very shady. And there's some amazing videos where they get super embarrassed. I am embarrassed for them on how they're trying to hide the topic. So I think that's point one. On point two is, when you're a company, what's more important is not the data that's publicly available on the internet, but what is your data? And so far, in where we are now in 2024, very few companies have figured out how to use their data into the models. It's starting, but it's probably 1% of all the possible enterprise data. That's what's coming.
What would you say to someone, let's say for a teacher in school, they might be worried about having AI in their classroom because for what they know, it's something that's going to ruin classwork and it's not going to make it authentic. What would you say on the flip side in your world to a customer or a business or an organization that might want to use AI, but they're kind of on the fence about it and they're not sure that they want to go down that road?
Yeah, when the printing press was first created, whatever it was, like the church and everybody freaked out because they were like, hey, we're going to lose control, and we can't give up with this idea of mass publication that everybody could afford books and everything like that. The reality is you can't stop innovation. You create these like pockets of people doing it in the shadows. I just think people got to get more comfortable to realize that it's not magic. And if you put the right governance and controls in place, I would much rather have this be on the forefront or have it be in the wide open than being kind of in the shadows. So for any teacher who's kind of scared about what is my GPT or ChatGPT policy or what am I doing about models, I think you got to kind of refocus the question to say, how can I use this for good and not worry about the possible for bad? And like, give kids the ability to have productivity gains and multiples and do things they never could do. Would you stop the internet? You would never. I think it's the same thing.
So that's the more negative side.
Yeah.
And although it's the negative side, it's not great talking about. It's important to show that there are the negatives, but there's also the positives. So speaking about the positives, what are some things that you'd like to highlight to the buyer when you're explaining
Totally.
why it's important for them to use watsonx?
Totally. So I think if you really look at it from a macro perspective, which means this kind of like global perspective, broader than just any individual person or any individual business. Like growth is really measured on something called GDP growth within countries. And like there's different levels of GDP growth that happen over time, and there's different sectors of the market that are going to grow at different rates. But the key for any business is they got to grow. And they got to grow within a population or set of constraints that are just available to pretty much everybody else. If you want to compete in today's world, either as a skilled person or as a company, you got to find a competitive advantage. And they say that AI might not take away jobs from managers, but managers and people who use AI are going to take jobs away from people who don't use AI. And I think that's the reality, is like if you really want to get ahead and get productivity gains, you got to figure out how to tap into this resource.
Yeah, so people who use AI won't replace them, but the people who use AI will replace people who don't.
For sure.
I think that's a great saying.
Thank you.
What do you think about models right now with watsonx, ChatGPT? What are your hopes for the future models,
Totally.
the things to come?
Totally. So if anybody wants to geek out on this, do a Google search on something called Hugging Face, which is the open source community of all the models. Think of everybody comes there with their models, and there's 10,000, if not hundreds of thousands of models. There's a leaderboard across a few different characteristics. Like people use AI for different things. There's a summarization, classification, something called RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. There's a lot of different things that fall into. Hugging Face is a great place to go to kind of get assessment of the assessment of the models, and use the best models for your specific use case. There are some amazing innovations in models that are coming out. One thing that's happened in the last 2 years is you could have very small companies, like 30, 40 people companies, that are now competing with the biggest players in the world, like Meta and others. So this world, we got to really watch it, because the models, it's almost like an arms race, which is a term that was used between US and Russia during the 50s, 60s, 70s, bolt up of like the nuclear arms race. That one would get something and then the other would have to get something, the other one would get it. We have the same thing on the model side right now, that every single week somebody is creating a new innovation, a new breakthrough. And whoever was the leader last week is probably displaced this week. So the idea that it's going to stop is probably unrealistic. I think what's going to happen is it's going to continue to accelerate, but you're going to get marginal differences until the next major breakthrough.
So that leads me perfectly to my next question. How do you think your company, IBM, and your team prepare for quick advancements in the IBM game? Because as we've seen, I mean, the pop-up of ChatGPT was so sudden. I was at dinner one night, and then all of a sudden, ChatGPT was all over my Safari. I mean, there's nowhere you can look now without probably seeing something that was either generated by AI, about AI, or talking about developments in technology. So what do you think, how do you pivot with such a fast-changing industry?
Totally. So I think the best analogy, just to make it simple for everybody to kind of relate to it, is the first fast service business, Starbucks, did mobile order. So when you could order on your phone and you could actually pick it up and it's ready for you. You don't have to talk to a person. It was game changing. It wasn't long until customers said, hey, I want that experience at Panera, and I want that experience in Dunkin' Donuts. And think about every one of those businesses started expanding and adding their own to it. It's the same thing here, is that the one thing for sure is you can't stand still. If you're standing still, you're slowly dying. So the trick is, how do you get yourself set up that you can constantly evolve and change, that you're keeping up, that you don't even know what 6 months looks like from now, but you just know you got to be ready to pivot and make the change.
So with our limited time, I just want to ask you, what advice would you give to a student or someone who wants to use AI in their daily life? What would you want them to know, especially if they want to go down a path like yours, or they want to use AI more?
Yeah. So my advice is simple for everybody, is the number one attribute that I look for when I hire somebody is curiosity. And what I would tell everybody is, there's a famous Warren Buffett quote, who's a famous investor, who said, if you want to get wealthy, figure out where the industry is going and get there first and set up a lemonade stand or a stand to kind of collect the profit from it. What I would tell everybody is, like, let your geek flag fly, right? Just get into the technology and like learn how to do it. And I think the more that you go hands-on and learn these skills, it doesn't become concepts, but you become good at it, you will become extremely marketable, and you will ride that wave of innovation.
And what would you say to someone who, like, how would you explain to someone that that is being told that AI is such a bad thing, but how would you say, like what is one phrase that you would say that you would motivate someone to use AI in their daily life?
I would say it's simple. If you're surrounded by people who say AI is bad, get a new group of friends, right? This is the future. This is where it's going. There's no turning back. This is going to be humongous. So I think if anybody's kind of surrounded by people who are saying it's bad, I think you got to find a new group of friends to hang out with.
Well, thank you so much. Eyal Steinberg, thank you for being here. That is all for our episode today. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time. This was STEM Talk. Great talking to you guys. Thank you so much.